That's not a knife. That's a knife. G'day, mate. Tes I, multi-voice reviewer. I have many voices for one opinion. And I know some of you are thinking, why am I talking with an Australian accent? Well, this is going to be our next review for the day, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to be reviewing, I mean, this is something that I have watched since I was a little kid, and I never came around to watch. I never came around to review it until now. But, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be reviewing to you the franchise of Crocodile Dundee. Now, the first movie came out in 1986. Year after I was born, and I was born in 85. And what we have is we have this Australian comedian who goes by the name of Paul Hogan. Now, Paul Hogan, he was definitely an Australian guy, and he before he ever started his fame in Crocodile Dundee, he was in that skit comedy series called The Paul Hogan Show. And a lot of people did confuse him with Clint Eastwood because he did a skit where he dressed up like Clint Eastwood. And that even upset Clint Eastwood himself. But all of a sudden, he decided to make a comedy of Crocodile Dundee. And how the story go, we have a New York journalist who goes by the name of Sue Charlton, played by Linda Koleski. And she goes all the way to Australia because she heard of a story about a guy who calls himself Crocodile Dundee who had encountered a crocodile and survived. So what she did, she took a trip all the way to Down Under. And she went all the way to Australia and meet a guy who goes by the name of Walter Riley, played by John Melton. Now, he's like the tour guide and trying to tell her all the stories about Crocodile Dundee until a crocodile showed up in the bar, and out comes Crocodile Dundee. But of course, as usual, he threw his knife. Now, in case you're wondering, this is not a Crocodile Dundee knife, but this is a Bowie knife, but it's not from Australia, it's from America. And how I can tell, has the name Winchester. I didn't even know that Winchester's makes knives. I always thought Winchester makes guns. Winchester rifle, and I'm aware about the Winchester curse. Anybody who gets shot by a Winchester rifle, their soul goes all the way to the Winchester mansion. And the wife, she knew that her house was haunted, her mansion was haunted, so she built a lot of stairs and doorways that leads to nowhere to confuse any spirits that end up into that house. But enough about the Winchester. Let's get back to Crocodile, huh? Now, he shows up with a stuffed crocodile, and he starts telling Sue about his encounter with the crocodile. Of course, he didn't bite his leg off. He just gave a love bite. He just have a couple of bite marks on his legs, but it ain't completely off. And of course, a couple of troublemakers, they calling him a crocodile poacher, and he says, "Nice for you to say, shit for brains," and then just punch him in the face. And I know I should have looked the part, but sadly, I don't have a cowboy hat or whatever kind of hat that Crocodile Dundee wears. But anyway, he also meets his bloke. There is the tough guy Donk, played by a former British boxer, Steve Rackman, and of course Nugget, played by Gary Skelton. And then he showed her the outback area and how the old jungle and the old desert and the jungle area of Australia. Showed him the boat where the crocodile attacked. And a lot of people say that he is sort of a spiritual jungle man that says that in his origin he hung out with the Aborigines, the natives of Australia. And speaking of Aborigines, one of his mates, he meets Neville Bell. Oh, no, wait. Oh, yeah. Neville Bell, played by. Wait a minute. David Galakala, played by Neville Bell. And he's an Aborigines, and he thinks he knows his way around the jungle, but he stepped into a bush. But of course, his mate says they're going to have like a bit of a group powwow thing, and she was wondering if she can go, but he says, nah. There's one thing about the Aborigines, when they do their celebration, women are not allowed. It's just a men-only party. So she kind of followed him, and seeing all those Aborigines guys going like, and of course there's Crocodile Dundee with the face paint, like he joined with them. And she was about ready to take a picture of him, but he spotted her. And of course, there was a big shocker. Sue decided to go out to the lake and fill up her canteen, and also probably take a little dip in the water until that giant crocodile jumped up, snapped her canteen, almost strangling her, and was going after her until Crocodile showed up. Pull out his knife and stab him straight in the head. Yeah. And of course, she hugged him for saving her life. And then she asked him, is he dead? And Crocodile said, well, he better be. Or else, hell of a hard time to skin him. And then she decided to take Crocodile Dundee with her to New York. Now, it's like one of those kinds stories like Jane took Tarzan to America in New York in the city, and Tarzan is not comfortable being in the city because it's not like the jungle. But Crocodile Dundee, to him, he likes to hang out in bars and make friends with some people. He meets an Italian cab driver. And also meet a couple of prostitutes and a pimp who is acting like a jackass. But of course, don't all pimps act like jackasses? No manners to the ladies at all. They might be prostitutes, but still, they should be treated with respect. And I remember one thing I thought it was so funny. Oh yeah, one thing in the movie that he does hypnotize animals. Like when he's driving his Jeep and this giant bull was in front of him, and he was like, "Get out of the way, dopey!" But wouldn't budge. So he walked up to that bull and went like, hypnotizing it and letting it sit down. And when that Italian cab driver wanted him to drive because he was wasted in the bar, and before he left, you hear him yelling, going like, "Out of the way, dopey! You're driving the wrong side, you billigan!" And then he meets this guy. He meets this guy who goes by the name of Richard Madsen, played by Mark Blum. But he turned out to be a jerk. That he even clubbed him for being such a jerk, trying to disrespect Crocodile. And he also meets Gus, played by Family Matters himself, Ronald Val Johnson. Well, at least there isn't Steve Urkel around going like, "Did I do that? Get out of my house, Steve!" Yeah, I grew up with Family Matters. But, one time he was, you know, this, Richard guy popped the question to Sue, and it kind of bummed Crocodile out, so he decided to go out for a bar, and then he meets the two prostitutes, and that same pimp showed up with two of his fellas showed up, trying to cause a problem, but he left his knife, giving it to the busboy. But Gus showed up, and he even took out the pimps, even took one of them out by taking one of the flap on the back of the limo and use it as a boomerang. And even Crocodile noticed that he was a tribal man. But anyway, he decided to explore more of New York, leave her alone since she's going to marry this Richard guy. So he decided to explore more of New York. But Sue, she came to a conclusion. She doesn't really like Richard. She likes Crocodile Dundee. And of course, even the famous scene that you remembered, where a couple of hoodlums showed up and they were showing their knives, and he said, "That's not a knife. That's a knife." And she said, "It makes me feel like Jane from a Tarzan movie." And he was like, "Oh." But anyway, she finally told Crocodile that she really loves him. So he walked all the way back to Sue, and they both hugged. The end. And then we get the sequel where it got that became more interesting than usual. There was Crocodile Dundee Part 2 back in 1988. And it turns out that it involved a Colombian drug lord. And this Colombian drug lord, he goes by the name of Luis Rico, played by Hesher Amberry. Turns out that Sue's ex-boyfriend, who was a photographer, took pictures of him killing somebody, and he sent the pictures all the way to Sue, all the way to New York. And Crocodile Dundee grabbed the pictures. And now Luis with his brother Miguel, played by Juan Vanazes de Alarcon. He has a very long name for me to pronounce. But anyway, turns out that they kidnapped Sue and holding her hostage until Crocodile shows up with the photos. And of course, a bunch of Japanese tourists saw him take down one of the bad guys, and they mistaked him as Clint Eastwood. Oh. And now, since the pictures have been given to the cops, they're not out of the woods yet because Luis is now in hiding, but sending some of his assassins and, of course, Miguel out to try to kill them. and they cannot go into a witness protection program. They need to go somewhere more safe. So, Crocodile Dundee and Sue decided to go back to Australia, where they met Donk, Nucket, and, of course, Walter. And of course, he was showing Sue more about his area, until all of a sudden it turns out that Lewis and Miguel, they hired a couple of Australian trackers to go after Mick Dundee, but one of the Aborigines who know that they were going after Mick Dundee, so he walked away, and when they were trying to get him back, he disappeared. And of course, one of the bad guys, he's going to be in part 3, except he will not be a bad guy, and I'll get to him later when I get to part 3, so don't worry. And of course, they kidnap Walter, and they were threatening to kill his friend Walter, but he said, "Shoot the dopey bastard!" And of course, Walter, he knows how Mick thinks. So now they both decided to ask him, what kind of guy is he? What kind of man this Crocodile Dundee supposed to be? And he said that he lived his entire life with the Aborigines, always been one with nature. And the Aborigines, they called him, from their Aborigines tongue, they call him the crocodile who walks like a man. And of course, he was playing tricks on them. I mean, he was capturing bad guys one by one, scaring the piss out of Lewis and Miguel. And of course, he even called some backup. So he called his Aborigine friend, Charlie, played by Ernie Dingo. And of course, one thing I really liked, when Walter was safe and he saw one of the Aborigines eating a bat, he asked him, "You enjoy eating that?" And he was like, "Nah, it needs garlic." But of course, Crocodile Dundee, he finally defeated Lewis and Miguel. So now they are safe and sound. And then we move right along to Crocodile Dundee in LA in 2001. And of course, we meet this one character who is in the second movie as a bad guy, but now in this movie, he plays Crocodile Dundee's friend named Jacko, played by Ellis Wilson. And of course, Crocodile Dundee has a son named Mickey Dundee, played by Serge Cockburn. And of course, he learns a lot from his dad about the woods and animals and such, that he even surprised his teacher. And when she saw his dad, she thought he was really attractive, but sadly he's taken. But they brought Jacko as a babysitter, and the teacher starts liking him. It's the Australian way, you know? Oh, gee. Oh, yeah, and a little known fact. I've heard about Paul Hogan and Linda, who played Sue. They both ended up married after the second movie. And they stayed married in 2001. But after the movie, turns out that her career wasn't going any further, and so they both divorced. And of course, Paul Hogan, he felt like he left everything behind from Australia, something that it was a part of his life. I mean, he felt like he lost everything. And he even had a certain disease where he has like muscle weakness that he cannot work out anymore. But anyway, in this, but of course, let's get back to the Crocodile Dundee in LA anyway. turns out that there was one reporter who knew about the movie producer was up to something sneaky, but they had him killed. So now, so now Sue is trying to get some information about it, and the reason why this studio they keep making these horrible, cheesy action film, and they're making them bad on purpose. So they don't care if they become. I mean, they don't care if they become box office success. They just want them bad on purpose. But of course, Crocodile Dundee, as usual, he blends in and makes friends with all the LA people and noticing how odd they are. I mean, all the LA people, they're a lot stranger than the New Yorkers. I mean, telling him about coffee enema. But of course, he decided to go undercover. So he started out as an extra in Hollywood, and then there was a monkey situation, didn't respond, and the trainer didn't do his job right. So Crocodile decided to become the monkey trader, teaching him to do exactly what Hollywood wants him to do. I mean, there was the actor who plays the bad guy, the evil Baron in the movie. He was like, watch this, Kiki, give me a drink." But the chimpanzee, he kept circling around, wouldn't do what he was supposed to do. So Crocodile Dundee talked to the monkey, and he even asked him, plain or diet? And the director was like, doesn't matter. Does he want a glass? And he said, doesn't matter. So he taught the monkey to get a diet Pepsi in an empty glass. So they did the whole scene, and the bad guy was like, what's this, Kiki, give me a drink. And of course, Kiki the monkey, he walked all the way, got a diet Pepsi in an empty glass, and gave it to him. Perfect scene. So now he becomes the monkey trainer. But he finally realized what's going on. Turns out that the big shot movie producer turns out to be, I mean, turns out to be Aaron Ruthman, played by Jared Burns. He's the one who's behind the production and everything. I mean, making all the movies and such. He's the producer. And of course, his right hand man, named Milos Drubinks, played by Jonathan Banks. You know, Jonathan Banks, he always appears in these kinds of movies and shows and always plays the bad guy. And I always kind of wonder, does he ever star in a movie where he's not the bad guy? I mean, maybe once he'll play a good guy? Or maybe do something heroic? Who knows? Although some people would say he's getting too old to do that. But anyway, turns out these bad guys, they took paintings during World War II in Poland, and it turns out that they stole these paintings during the war and they smuggled them. And now they're in Hollywood and have them as props on the set, and then make people think that those paintings are destroyed when they're about ready to do a burning scene. So one thing Crocodile Dundee had to do, he thought these paintings had drugs on them, but it turns out there's more to it than that. It turns out that the paintings, they worth a lot of money, and they've been smuggling these paintings behind the movie studio. So one thing Crocodile has to do is he has to take one of those paintings and bring it into the art expert to see if they are authentically real, and that would probably foil the movie producer. So Crocodile has to deal with the bad guys, and of course now he took out the bad guys one by one, but now two of the main bad guys showed up, and he said he couldn't raise this arm because he's focusing on the king of the jungle, and the lion just showed up, and they think he was bluffing. He said, yeah, maybe I am. And he started roaring, so he had his hand up, and he said, hey, don't go for your guns, that just pissed him off. And he said, and it's not him I'm worried about. It's the missus over there, and his mother-in-law. She's in a really bad mood. I can't control her. She has PMS or something. And then he grabs Milos and he said, "Now you pointed a gun at my wife, so I'm gonna help you lose some weight. I'm gonna let this lion here take a big chunk out of your fat ass." But of course, they succeeded, and this time Crocodile Dundee did propose to Sue, and they both got married. And when Sue threw the bouquet was snatched by that giant crocodile. So now Crocodile Dundee and Jacko have to go into the swamp and get the bouquet back. And those are the trilogy of Crocodile Dundee. Now, don't get me started with the other movie made back in 2018, Dundee. I mean, sure, Chris Hemsworth is in it, and so is Hugh Jackman and ever so beautiful and sexy Margot Robbie. I mean, at least they gave Paul Hogan one cameo as Crocodile Dundee, but I never seen the movie because I mean, I guess the streaming service wouldn't even allow this movie to be seen. And good riddance because I didn't even want to see it anyway. But another movie they made in 2020 is, of course, the very eccentric Mr. Dundee, which is just a movie about Paul Hogan playing Paul Hogan, who's trying to come back come back as Crocodile Dundee, and somehow disaster keeps happening all around him. I mean, at first they wanted to make another Crocodile Dundee movie and have a son played by Bruce Willis. No, I agree with Dundee. I mean, now I'm not trying to be racist or anything, but it's just having Will Smith playing the son of Crocodile Dundee. No, Even if they try to think up a backstory that he was with a woman who's Aborigines, it still doesn't count. And then all of a sudden they think they should do another movie and he would fall in love with a girl. And all of a sudden they thought of a young actress. What? I mean, they thought of this Rachel actress from Mean Girls, and then Selena Gomez? I mean, these girls are young enough to be his granddaughters, for God's sakes! Or even are young enough to be his daughters, for God's sakes! Why choose young actresses? Why not Catherine Zeta-Jones? Or even Angelina Jolie? Or Charlize Theron? Or any of the actresses who is about the same age as Crocodile, huh? This is why I don't like Hollywood. At all. Because they're just such irresponsible jackasses. Well, Hollywood always pissed me off anyway from their stupid decisions and all. But one thing that he did do, he was supposed to be knighted, but instead he let his agent take the credit for the knighting. Because one thing he wanted to do is to go back to Australia and see a Broadway play that his granddaughter's starring in. And that is the sweetest thing ever. And right now, I hear that Paul Hogan himself is going back to Australia. And for the future of Crocodile Dundee, I think we should just leave it be. Well, this is my review for today. If any of you like this review, please leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe. I don't know about you, but after talking about Crocodile Dundee and the whole thing about Australia, I think I might need to cool down with some Fosters and maybe go to Outback Steakhouse. No rules, just right. I'm the multi-voice reviewer. I remember it so I can jog your memory.